Well, hello and welcome to TransForm Tuesday. I'm Dave McCormick, VP of Product Management here at Alpha Software. I'm also joined today by Sarah Mitchell, who is in charge of our documentation department. On today's TransForm Tuesday, I'm going to be showing you an example of something you can do with TransForm, but I'm also going to be here to take your questions. So if you do have any questions, go ahead and type those questions into the questions box in the GoToWebinar control panel. I'm going to start out here by sharing my screen. And Sarah, if you're there, can you let me know if my screen is showing up?
Yes, it is. I can see it.
Excellent, fantastic. So today on TransForm Tuesday, I have, so a couple weeks ago actually on TransForm Tuesday, I did a survey and started asking people what they would like to see. And some people wanted to see the new TransForm programming language, which isn't quite out. So we had Dan do a demonstration of the alpha version of that, soon to be beta and soon to be released. But the other thing that people had asked for was showing how to build sort of a dispatch or inspection type of system in which the data is first pre-filled partially by an application and then pushed to the phone for the rest of it to be filled out. And the example that I had suggested that we do was to use Google Sheets because it's free and it's a good example, and to use Zapier because it's a no programming and no coding way of building out these workflows and these integrations with TransForm. Certainly not the only way to go, but it's a pretty easy way. And when you see how to do it in Zapier, it sort of can give you ideas for how you might want to do custom coding instead in Alpha Anywhere or some other low-code system. So today I'm going to try to go slow enough that for those of you who have done Zapier integration in the past and have an account, should be able, I'm hoping to go slow enough so that you'll be able to follow along and maybe not do it while I'm doing it here live today, but at least if you're watching it on video, be able to play it back and follow along as I go that way. So we'll start here by first reminding people who are telling people who are new what Zapier is. Zapier is a service. There is a free version and there is a paid version. It depends on how much data you're putting through it and how complicated your zaps are. A zap is like a type of workflow. So a zap is when something happens in one application, Zapier can take the data from that application and use it in a different application to do something else. So in today's zap or today's recipe, we're going to create a new TransForm form whenever a new row is filled out in Google Sheets. So you fill out a row in Google Sheets like here. Let me show you a picture. And when you save that row, it should appear on your phone with the data filled in like it does here. So let me show you how all those pieces work together. And it should give you a good idea for how you can do your own types of integrations, even if you're not using Zapier. So to begin with this particular one, we are going to take a look at the three things you need to put together this recipe. The first thing is you'll need a TransForm account. A trial account is fine. You can still get an API key from a trial account. You're going to need Google Sheets, and you can get that at sheets.google.com. For TransForm, just as a reminder, you can go to transform.alphasoftware.com to get a trial account there. And then lastly, you're going to need a Zapier account. And with that Zapier account, you're going to need a special invitation from us at Alpha to let you use our TransForm Zap that we put together, our TransForm integration with Zapier. So to get that invitation from us, you just need to visit this web address up here, http://bit.ly. It's one of these bit.ly addresses, bit.ly/transformzap with just a capital Z or Z for Zap. It is case sensitive. So if you follow that, that should bring you to Zapier and also allow you to accept the invitation from us to use TransForm with your Zapier account. Okay. So the first thing we're going to do after we have these accounts set up, your TransForm account, your Google Sheets account, and your Zapier account is that we're first going to go into TransForm and we're going to build out a pretty simple form. So the one I built out in this morning here, I've taken a picture of it, is I called the form, I think I called it TransForm Tuesday, and I gave it first name, last name, street address, issue, notes, whether or not the issue was resolved, and a signature field. So 7 fields in all. But let's go ahead and build that for real in TransForm. So let me just hop over here to TransForm. And to build something new, you simply go to the Designer tab and you click the plus button and you choose Add Blank to create a new form. We'll call this TransForm Tuesday 2. And then I just used input quick start text to get going, which isn't the only way to build out a form, but it's certainly a really fast way of building out a form. And then we pop over here to PowerPoint and just to remind me of the fields that I was using. And they are first name, last name. So first name, last name, street address, issue, notes, resolved. And this is going to be a yes, no field. So I'll just click the magic wand next to that. And then a signature. And this will, of course, be a signature field. So I'm going to click the signature button right there. So there's a simple preview. Those are all of the fields that we have there. I can go ahead and save that. And I click to save changes up to the cloud so that it is available now through the API. So I've created my form here. And here it is. Now what I'm going to do is go through and actually name each one of these fields. So for the this field, first one I'm going to call first name. When we created before were simply field labels, but these will be the names of the fields as they appear in the API. So it's very helpful to have them have useful names, not just field 1, field 2, field 3. There's last name. And we're going to do street address. I'm not sure if you're allowed spaces. I tend to not ever use spaces in field names, though. Issue, notes, field is resolved, and then finally signature. Okay. So I'm going to save these. Again, I'll push that back up to the cloud. I'm going to click this orange link here, click to save changes. And there we go. So now my form has been created. I could open it up on a form right now and on my phone right now or my tablet and start using it. But instead we're here to build an integration. So the next thing we're going to do, now that we have this TransForm-like form built out, is we are going to build out a Google spreadsheet. This will be the input source for the data. So I'm going to go into sheets.google.com right here. And I'm going to build out, I already have one here, but it's called TransForm Tuesday Test. And so I'm going to click on that. What you would do is you would click Add New, and then you just give it a name up here on the left. Here I've called it TransForm Tuesday Test. I'll give you guys a moment to catch up if you're following along on video later on. Okay, and now over here, I am giving the first row will have the field names that I'm going to use. And I'm not going to use all the same fields that I did in the application. I only need to enter just a few. So I'm going to go with first name, last name, street address, and issue. And the other fields, like whether or not the issue was resolved, or the notes or the signature field, we're going to actually enter those in on the phone, so they don't actually belong here in this spreadsheet. This spreadsheet is just to create a brand new record that's partially filled out so that someone out in the field can finish filling out the rest of it while they're there performing maintenance or service or something like that. So with these 4 columns created in the first row and the sample data in the second row, I'm going to go back. Actually, let's go back to the PowerPoint. And we'll take a look and see what the next step is we need to do. The next step is we now need to take TransForm and we need to take Google Sheets and we need to connect them together using Zapier. So to do that, we're going to log into our Zapier account using the bit.ly link I just gave you a little bit earlier. And you're going to tell it you want to create a new Zap. And what you're going to use are Google Sheets. Now I have screenshots of all of this, but I don't mind going ahead and trying to do all of this live. It might be a little bit easier for you to see. So I'm going to go back to my dashboard. Here I am in Zapier, and I'm going to say make a Zap. And a Zap first starts with a trigger. The trigger is a trigger application. In this case, our trigger application is Google Sheets, because when someone does something in Google Sheets, we want that data to be passed along to TransForm. So I'm choosing Google Sheets, and Google Sheets gives you two choices of triggers. You can do something when a new or updated spreadsheet row occurs. In other words, when you enter a new spreadsheet row or you update an existing spreadsheet row, it'll trigger. Or you could just do it when a new spreadsheet row is added. And that's the one we're going to use, is this second one here, new spreadsheet row. And we'll just save and continue. And here's where we connect to Zapier. Now, your account, if you've never done this before, all of these spaces here are going to be empty. If you've done it once before, you'll probably have an integration already set up. If you do have an integration already set up, all you have to do is just click on that integration and click Save and Continue. I'm going to assume, though, that you haven't. So we're going to connect to an account instead. So I'm going to click this Connect to Account button. And because I'm connecting to Google Sheets, it's going to ask me for my Google sign-in credentials, which I will do right here. So there it is, and it's created yet another integration for me, but here it is right here. And if I click Test, it should be able to log in and make sure that it can access my spreadsheets, which it can. So now we save and continue. So we're now hooked up to my Google Sheets account. Now we need to tell it what spreadsheet in particular we want to look for and what worksheet within that spreadsheet we want to look at. So for the spreadsheet, just from the drop down here, I'm going to choose my TransForm Tuesday test, the one that I just created, that spreadsheet I just created with you. And under worksheet, I only have one worksheet on that one, and it's the default named one called Sheet 1. So we'll just call that Sheet 1. And now I hit continue. And now what it's going to do is it's going to pull, which it did very quickly here, it's going to pull some data out of that spreadsheet just so that we have something to work with so that we can perform a test. And you can actually see what data was pulled out here by using the dropdown. And the dropdown shows the information that I had typed in before. There's a first name, last name, the issue was router not working, and that was on Main Street. Now, what I noticed here is that this is sort of an ugly view. It doesn't say which field is which, and I was afraid that I had done something wrong when I set up the spreadsheet. But in fact, this is how it works. You're going to get these weird, funky names. But later on, when we're doing the mapping, you're actually going to see the right names. So I'll show you how that works, actually right now. So let's go ahead and hit continue. And now I get to choose the action app. Before we did the trigger app. So the trigger app is when you enter in a new spreadsheet row, the action app is going to be TransForm. So we're going to choose TransForm. And TransForm only has one action, and it's called Create a New Form Instance. And so I'm just going to click Save and Continue. And again, here's where we connect up to an account. If you've already connected to TransForm before, you'll see your integration here, and you can just choose it, and it will already know your credentials and your API key. But if you don't, you connect to account, and this time, instead of asking you for Google credentials, it's going to ask you for Alpha credentials. So here it's asking you for your TransForm API key. So you're probably wondering, where the heck do I get one of those? Well, you get it right in TransForm. So let's pop over here to TransForm. I'm just going to close that. And you'll see that if you go to the TransForm home, there's some menu choices here, and one of them is Get API Key. So I'm going to click Get API Key. And under Get API Key, it asks how much permission should this API key be given? Should it be allowed to read data? Should it be allowed to write data? Should it be allowed to create forms or form instances? Can you invite users? We actually have a lot of granularity over what you can allow or restrict with an API key. But here I'm just going to take all. So just for testing purposes, I'm going to give this API all access. So I choose all and I click Get API Key. And when I do that, it's going to show an API key up here on the screen. Now, don't use my API key. Use your own API key. So now that we have that, when we go back into Zapier and we say we want to connect to an account, this is where we would paste in that key. Okay. I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to use the one that I've already set up. So I'm going to click Save and Continue. And now on this screen, it's asking us some more about TransForm. Over here, by the way, you can kind of see where you are in the process of setting up your TransForms app. We started with the trigger application, which was adding in a new spreadsheet row. But now under this action, we're saying that we want to create a new form instance. And so far, we've connected to our TransForm account, but we need to say what kind of form instance we want to create. So we do that right here from this dropdown. And in this dropdown, I actually have a lot of forms that I've created before. So I think mine's towards the bottom. There it is, TransForm Tuesday 2. That was the form that we had just created together a few moments ago. And then we need to say which user is entering this data. And these are your list of authorized users in TransForm. Let me show you where you find that. Back here under Alpha TransForm, back here on the Home tab, you go to User Management and let's say Manage User Roles. And you'll see I have set up 4 different user IDs that are allowed to use my TransForm account, and they all have different roles. So Dave at alphasoftware.com, that's me. I have all of I can do all of the things that you can do in an account. But then I created this other one called ybsdave at Gmail, and they're only allowed to fill out forms and so on. So these are, if you wanted to add new users to your account, you'd click over here, Add Users to Account, and you just type in the email address of the user and you click Add. What happens when you do that is if they are in the system already, they're just brought into your account. But if they're not in the system already, they will get an email asking them to create a TransForm account. And that's basically just create a login, a username and password. They don't need a license because they're going to be using your license. You're giving them one of your seats as part of your license to use your account. So that all happens here in user management. Well, let's go back to Zapier. And so the person entering this data, when I choose from my choices, are those 4 people from TransForm, and I'm going to choose me. And you should choose yourself in this one because you'll see it'll make for a better demonstration later. So now that I've chosen me, it shows me first name, last name, street address, issue, notes, resolved, signature. It shows me all of the fields we just created in our TransForm application. Now we're not going to use all of them. In the Google Sheet, we only used a few of them. So let me just show you how to map them. So here we are under first name. I'm going to click this little plus button, and I'm going to choose my first name field. Then I'm going to go to last name, and I'm going to choose my last name field. And notice that this time, and actually the field labels are right. It isn't some weird column $3 or something like that. It actually shows you the right ones. Street address, I'm going to choose street address. And issue, I'm going to choose issue. And these other ones we're leaving blank because those will get filled out in the field. So now I'm going to click continue. And the first thing it's going to ask is, do you want to send a test to TransForm? And the answer is yes, I sure do. And it's showing you what data is going to be input. All right, so we'll scroll down here and I'm going to click send test to TransForm. And here's what happened. I got back a result with a form instance ID. That's sort of gobbledygook, but it means something to the system. Records added, it added 1 record. And was there an error? False. So that's good. No errors, a record was added. That's exactly what we want to see. So let's go see the record that was just added. So I'm going to go back to TransForm, and we're going to go to the Management Console. And we are going to choose the type of form that we're interested in looking at. And that, in this case, let me just refresh this to make sure I have the latest ones. It's always a good practice. There's a little link down here. And TransForm Tuesday 2 is my form. And there we are. You'll see my name, last name, street address, and what the issue was. So it's here in the TransForm cloud. But as another proof, let's see if I can do this live on my phone. I am going to actually mirror my phone. Okay, and I'm going to go into the TransForm application. Come on, TransForm application. Here you go. And actually, I'm going to log out. I have quite a few different accounts, so I wasn't sure which one I'm logged into. So I'm just going to, better safe than sorry. I'm just going to log out and log back in. And we're going to choose Dave's account. I think that's where I was working. Okay, it's downloading forms from the server. And we should see, whoop, at the very bottom here, I'll put my mouse on it, TransForm Tuesday 2. Look at that time, 5:19. That's kind of weird. It was actually entered at 1:19 my time, but I think this is Greenwich Mean Time. So I'm going to double tap on that. And sure enough, there is the data. And now I could start saying, putting in notes, like, and I happen to like to dictate because I think it works pretty well. Like, router stopped working because it was unplugged, but also discovered that power supply had conked out. So we replaced the power supply and all is now working. Oops, I meant to say. And I'll say that it's resolved. And there it is. And I'll tap it and I'll sign it. And there we go. That's all set. And I'll push that back up onto the cloud. No errors. That's always good to see. And over here, whoop, I should be able to refresh this data. And over here, you'll see that there was the data that we took from the Google Sheet. There's the data I just filled out with you on the phone. And I clicked that it was resolved, and I made a signature right there. So that is pretty much the whole demonstration beginning to end. Let me give you just a quick review, though, in PowerPoint form, so that if you want to set this up yourself, you just remember how to do it. The first thing you're going to do is you're going to make sure that you have a TransForm account, and you'll get that at transform.alphasoftware.com. You'll need a Google Sheets account. Go to sheets.google.com. If you already have Gmail, or YouTube or any of the other things that you can log into Google for, that'll be the same login to get into Google Sheets. You're going to need a Zapier account, and do use this bit.ly link, bit.ly/transformzap with a capital Z. And that will let you have access to our TransForm application in your own apps. Let me just close this window here. The next thing we're going to do is go into TransForm and build out a simple application with first name, last name, street address, issue, notes, resolved, signature were the ones that we used. The next thing we did was we built out a spreadsheet, but we didn't use all of the fields. We only used some of the fields that were common. We did that in Google Sheets. And we gave that sheet a name so we'd remember it later on when we're trying to connect to it in Zapier. Then we went into Zapier and we said create a new Zap. And the first thing it asked us for was a trigger application, and we chose Google Sheets. We had to log into Google Sheets using our username and password. And once that was set up, it then asked us, that might be in reverse order. I think it then asks you what the trigger is first. So we choose new spreadsheet row. And then it almost certainly asked us to log in. And once it logged in, it asked which spreadsheet we wanted to use. So that was the one we just created. And which worksheet on the spreadsheet. If chances are there's just one, it'll be called sheet 1, but it'll appear in the dropdown. And now that's all set. So the next thing you do is you create the action part of the Zapier Zap. And here you choose another application. So in other words, what happens when that data is collected? So we're going to choose TransForm as the action app. And we logged in or we made that connection here to the app by using an API key. And we got that API key from TransForm Central, transform.alphasoftware.com. And it was over here in the left menu. It said Get API Key. We were able to generate that. We chose all in this example. I think we could do create form instance. I think that's the only permission we would actually need for our example, but all is just easier for this example. And then we got the API key and we pasted it back into Zapier. When that was done and we had connected, it asked us which form name in TransForm. So we chose the form name we created earlier, TransForm Tuesday. And then it asked which user was entering the data. You want to use your username. And the reason why you want to use your username here is so that when you show up on the phone, it will appear on the phone. Just so you know, in TransForm, your management console, when you're logged in, shows you all of the forms that have been entered by anyone who are assigned by anyone. But when you log in on a phone, it only shows you the ones that are assigned to your name. So make sure you put your correct email address in here, or whatever email address you use when you log in to TransForm on your phone. Once that was done, it told us the fields that were available. And we just did a bit of field mapping by clicking on the plus buttons and assigning first name to first name and last name to last name and street address to street address and so on. It then performed a test for us and showed us that one record was added and that there were no errors. And once that was done, I was able to log into TransForm. I logged out and logged back in again, just in our example. And I was able to see the TransForm Tuesday form that we had filled out. And by clicking on it, I was able to see all of the data behind it. So that is my example. Good, I was hoping to fit it into 30 minutes. We did it in 27 minutes. So there's definitely time for questions and stuff. Let's see, one question we have here. So if you do have any questions on this, please let me know. If you're interested in getting hold of this PowerPoint deck besides just the video, just send an email over to tfservice, as in transform service, at alphasoftware.com. I'd be happy to get that off to you. So the question here is, can you schedule distribution of forms for repeat tasks? And I imagine what is meant by that is, if you know that there are a bunch of tasks that might come up let's say every Wednesday, a particular piece of equipment needs to be inspected because it's a weekly inspection, right? Can you automate it so that it creates one, each time? Is that the question that's being asked? I'm just asking the person who asked me if you could just type in. Okay, yeah, great, that's it. So the answer is yes, you can. So a couple ways of doing that. You could certainly do that with a cron type of script. You could do that with a script that you used in Alpha Anywhere. And I wonder in Zapier, I wouldn't be surprised if Zapier, one of its built-in features, let's take a look, is some sort of clock or timer so that it knows to initiate some action after a certain amount of time has gone by. So let's just take a look at that, because if that were that would certainly be a very easy way to go about doing it. Yeah, let's just give it a shot. Let's go back to the dashboard. I'll create a new Zap. And those are my apps, built-in apps, webhooks, Zapier Manager, schedule. There we go. So the answer is yes, you could do that. Now, when you do that, you're going to have to then tell Zapier every week that you want to look at a certain place. And you could set it up in Google Sheets or something like that. Or you know what, or actually you could probably just hard code this data back in. So let's say every week, let's give this a shot. Every Wednesday at 2 a.m. Okay. I wonder what data that pulls down. That just seems like a trigger, right? Oh, it tells you the date and time. Oh, that's handy. Continue. And then what we could do is choose the action of TransForm, create a new form instance. I'm already hooked up here, so I don't have to reconnect. Let's just go save and continue. Form name. Okay, TransForm Tuesday 2. The person entering the data, that's me. First name, so I'm going to maybe just put that in notes. I'm going to say, and in notes, let's say, day of the week. Let's put in the actual date. Month, day. Oh, actually, there's a whole one for year. Why don't I erase that? Pretty date, July 31st, 2018. And then I could say issue, weekly inspection for machine. Continue. And then send test to TransForm. And the record was added. And I just need to remember, and I'm not sure I showed you this in the previous one, but do remember to turn on the Zap or it's not going to work. You could see whether or not your Zap is on and off here in the dashboard as well. So here we've got our first one, the timer one. Probably want to give that a better name. Every Wednesday, send a ticket. That's my Zap. So that should do it every Wednesday. Let's just take a look and see whether or not it works, because I think you're allowed to just, you can actually, by the way, when you set up a Zap, when something takes place, it doesn't happen instantly. I think it's like every 10 minutes or 15 minutes, depending on whether or not you had a paid account, it'll go and see whether or not, for example, your Google spreadsheet has been updated or your calendar has been updated, and then it performs an action. So when you're testing, though, you don't want to have to wait 10 or 15 minutes to see if you had it set up and then make a change and wait another 10 or 15 minutes. So what I found is what you can do here in Zapier is right in the dashboard is you can just choose run, and it will run that command. So I just had to rerun the every Wednesday thing. And now if I take a look at TransForm and I refresh, and you know, this is one of these, oh, this might actually work. Here we go. Click here. Weekly inspection for machine was assigned to me, and I'm sure if I open it up my phone, I would see the same thing. Great. Well, I've come to the end of the time. Thanks very much for those who asked questions. Thank you, everyone who attended. And if you do have any questions before next Tuesday, send them to tfservice@alphasoftware.com, and we'll be happy to take care of you. So thank you again. We hope to see you next Tuesday. Take care and goodbye.